Bible in a year, 12. Genesis 38 to 40. Listen, guys, let me tell you something. Today's lesson, Genesis 39, for me, one of the greatest lessons I've ever received on how to resist temptation. Join us. Here we go. All right, guys, here we go. We're laughing because when Tanner hits the clicker, he's so just demonstrative. And episode 12, Genesis 38 to 40. He was making us laugh when he did that. That's why I said that. But, man, we love him. You know what he told me at the end of last episodes? He said, Dad, there is no more iTunes. I was like, what? I have iTunes. And he says, no, you don't. You have Apple Music. So that's my kid. Man, I love him, though. He's great. He's great. We asked Garrett if he wanted to do this, but he said no, so we had to settle on Tanner. That's not true. All right, here we go. Genesis 38, 39, 40. What is going on with Genesis 38? The whole Judah and Tamar incident. I don't want to go too deep into this, but it is important because this is King David's family line. Okay,
right.
So Tamar is the wife of Judah's firstborn son, heir. He was wicked. God takes him out. God kills him. It was the responsibility of the next oldest brother to step in line and do his fatherly duties, while Onan ends up having a sexual relationship with Tamar, but he spills his semen on the ground. God strikes him dead. Well, there's one more son, Shelah, but he's too young to be married. So Judah says, hey, listen, just wait on him. Judah had no intention of ever giving his son Shelah to Tamar. Tamar's sent back home to her family. He never does give Shelah as the husband. Tamar comes up with this weird ruse to get back at her father-in-law, Judah. She dresses up as a shrine prostitute. Judah has a relationship with her. She gets pregnant. Judah says, well, you have committed adultery. You're going to die. She says, well, tell me if this looks familiar. His signet ring and his cord.
That's right.
And he says, well, you're more righteous than I. Well, that's how this all goes down. Well, she has two children. She has a set of twins, Perez and Zerah. If you go to the book of Ruth, tail end of the book of Ruth, you will see that Perez is King David's 7th great-grandfather. Perez is David's great-grandfather. That's what you're reading about in Genesis 38. Then you get over to Genesis 39. We're back to Joseph. He's been sold into Potiphar's house. Wow, what a mess that is. God blesses Joseph and thus blesses Potiphar's household, but Potiphar must be gone a lot, the captain of Pharaoh's guards. He's gone a lot, and Potiphar's wife has the hots for Joseph and keeps trying to hit on him. He keeps resisting. Finally, she sets him up to be falsely accused of sexual assault. Even though Potiphar was blessed financially, he says, you're not doing this to my wife. You're going to jail. Throws Joseph in jail. He'd never done anything wrong, but still, that doesn't matter. He goes to jail. He's the Hebrew slave, and he had no rights. He just goes off to jail. He's blessed in jail. Talk about the inmates being in charge of the asylum. Joseph is in charge of the jail. Like, he's an inmate in the jail, in charge of the jail. If anybody's ever seen Shawshank Redemption, it's kind of like that, I can't think of the guy's name off the top of my head. Tanner, what's the guy's name in Shawshank Redemption? Andy Dufresne. Andy Dufresne, falsely accused in the jail. I don't know if anybody's ever thought about Shawshank in those terms. Have you ever seen Shawshank Redemption?
I have. Yeah.
I love that movie. Anytime it's on TV, I watch it. But anyways, so Joseph is in charge at the jail. Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker get thrown in jail.
Yeah.
They have dreams. Joseph says, well, the Lord has blessed me and will allow me to give his interpretation. He never takes credit for it.
Yeah.
He's given me, the ability to interpret these dreams. And so he goes to God and he says, well, this is what God says. Cupbearer, you're going to be restored. Baker, you're going to have your head cut off. And then Joseph says to the cupbearer, hey, I've been down here for a while. Could you maybe put in a good word for your buddy?
Mm.
And what happens? Like so many people. I mean, it's like the 10 lepers. Only one comes back, and Jesus says, hey, I thought I cleansed 10. Where are the other 9?
Yeah.
Most people take the money and run,
Yeah.
and that's what the cupbearer does in this case. Well, there you go, Pastor Daniel. Genesis 38 to 40.
It's a lot.
What you think, brother?
It's a lot. It's a lot. I love what you just taught there in Genesis 38, and
That passage.
Yeah, just walking us to the Messianic line, and it's just so important to see that. Joseph runs right out of his clothes in 39, right? He just runs away. You said something interesting at the beginning of this lesson or this message here, that possibly one of the greatest lessons you've ever learned about temptation. I'm really interested in hearing that.
I'll tell you, this is what it was.
Okay.
It was the summer of 1997. I'll never forget it. It was at a Promise Keepers. I went with the guys from my Bible study. Tony Caridi was hosting a Bible study at his house. Went with the guys from our Bible study. Nate Carr went with us. Who was the speaker? Somebody you referenced a couple episodes ago, Crawford Loritz.
How about that?
Brian's dad.
Yeah.
He actually talked about Brian in that sermon that night, 1997. Summer of 1997 was the year before we were asked to start Kingdom. Crawford Loritz contrasted Joseph with Potiphar's wife and David with Bathsheba. Neither one of them had accountability, okay?
Yeah.
One was where he was supposed to be. One was where he wasn't supposed to be. And when temptation presented itself, one lingered and was drawn into the temptation and sin, and one ran and walked away from sin and temptation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's powerful.
Yeah.
When you look at Joseph, he was at his job where he was supposed to be in the house. You know what I mean? When he did not have accountability because it was just Joseph and Potiphar's wife, he had no accountability because let's be honest.
Huge point.
Isn't that when most people sin?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if there's a guy out there who struggles with pornography, okay? Most of those guys, you know, it's when nobody's looking. And I talk about a book I read years ago. It was titled "Who You Are When No One's Looking." That's character, man. That's character. So Joseph, there's no accountability, and he realizes that in that moment. And when she makes a pass on him, one, we talked about this a couple of episodes ago, love God, love neighbor. He says, how can I sin against God?
Yeah.
How could I do this
Yeah.
to this man who's treated me so well? Love God, love neighbor. And he says, no way. And when she grabs a hold of him, he wrangles himself out of his coat and literally runs. I was talking about that Bible study teacher that I had years ago, and he actually taught on this in one of our studies. Here I am, 25 years old, 26 years old, whatever it was. And he said it was an old Bible school song that he learned. Put on your running shoes, Joseph.
Yeah.
And so when you look at something like this, when temptation comes to us, lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, pride of life, we talked about that in the very first episode.
Yeah.
Put on your running shoes. Run from temptation.
Yeah.
And I think it's just so important.
You know, two things from the entirety of the readings today, and for me at least, and thank you for sharing that. It was beautiful. The
Welcome.
first thing is really looking at Potiphar and his wife and not recognizing the favor of God that's on this man that's living in their house. Think about what he says to her.
That's exactly.
You just quoted that. You just quoted what he says to her. Yeah. You know, it wasn't like he just was like and ran. Though, like your master hasn't withheld anything from me, right? Like my goodness, are we able to recognize when God is moving and working and using a person? You know, like that's
she's so deluded.
Yeah.
She is totally driven by her flesh.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's alarming.
And he ultimately is too.
Right.
Like He's the rich young ruler before the rich young ruler even
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
You know, what should I do? Should I choose this household and my position and my power, or should I choose the God of this man who's clearly blessing? I mean, seek ye first the kingdom of God
Yeah.
and his righteousness, and then all these things will be added unto you. We talked about that in a few episodes
Yeah.
ago. Potiphar chooses all these things.
That's right.
And you know, it's why Jesus says, don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust can destroy and thieves can break in and steal. Rather, store up your treasures in heaven where moth and rust can't destroy
Yeah.
and thieves can't break in
Yeah.
and steal. And, I mean, this is what we've got going on here.
Yeah, well,
Potiphar chooses the earth,
That's
and
right.
Joseph keeps choosing heaven.
Yeah. What a message there for marriages. You know what I mean? Love your wife as Christ loves the church. I mean, like, where
Not even a
you
question.
at, dude?
Hey, and this is something that really stands out to me, too. I mean, it's funny. We're already at the 11-minute mark.
Oh, gosh.
It's just amazing how we can just talk about these things. When you look at Joseph's life,
Mm-hmm.
this is a brother who has very few breakdowns. After the famine comes, I think he's a little mean to the people in Egypt. We can talk about that when we get there if we want to. We'll see. But he taxes them and taxes them and taxes them and taxes
Right.
them. We can debate that all
Yeah,
we want.
yeah.
Right here, this is like the one, I hate to use a cliche, this is Joseph's like Achilles heel in his entire life. This is a guy who has trusted in God completely,
Yeah.
exhaustively.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe I'm taking it too far, but this is one instance where you see he's human too.
Right.
Hey, cupbearer, put in a good word for me with Pharaoh when you get there, because I've been falsely accused. You know, I know we want this guy to be perfect,
Yeah.
but he's not perfect.
Right.
And watch this. It's okay.
Yeah. I do love, then this was my final point. It relates
Sure.
directly to what you're saying. I do love the progression he walks here, though, because like you talk about like breakdowns for Joseph, and like, man, I love who he becomes at the end of Genesis and says, what you intended for evil, God made for good. I love that. And like it like to me, so like if we had to take 3 points here, all right. So I want to take his life when he's sharing with his brothers and his father, his dad, hey, I have dreams and you all are going to bow down to me, right? So like you mentioned, there's some arrogance in that. Then we get to this point where like, hey, I can't do it, but God, I can do it through the power of God that God gives me. So I want God to get the credit. I'm going to interpret the dream, but make sure God gets the credit here, right? And so in this prison, it's almost like he's being refined, and he's being purified, and he's being made whole, right? We're seeing some of the qualities that are mentioned in Ephesians 1, Colossians 1, like he's being made holy, blameless, right? And so he does say, hey, he still says, put in a good word for me, right? But then you get to the end of Genesis, and he says, this wasn't about you guys. It wasn't about me. This was all for God's glory. And like, I love that. I love looking at the refinement and the progression that Joseph walks through. And I think we can see that from the arrogance of a boy now to this time where I'm in prison. And I want you all to know clearly that God can interpret dreams, but still don't forget me. You know what I mean? Until
he goes
we get
from
to
an overconfidence
to
a fear.
That's right.
And like,
and then finally, like, it's just about God.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Love
Hey
that.
guys, wow, boy, this is good stuff. But seriously, that lesson on overcoming temptation.
Yeah.
Single greatest
Huge.
lesson that I've ever received on
Huge.
overcoming temptation. So, well, there you go. Episode 12, Genesis 38 to 40, guys. This has been so much fun, and I hope you're enjoying everything. So we're tightening it up for you. Got our under 15 minutes every day, but just God bless you guys. Keep your reading going, consistency every single day. God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow.